Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. You do not see my studio, and you do not see Ron Paul today because I have a special guest. Dr. Paul is out of town, and Chris Rossini, Mr. Friday, is with us today. Chris, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you today. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it's great. Long distance.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about President Trump's historic visit to the Middle East. This is his first foreign visit since his 2.0 presidency began in January. And as customary, he would go to Europe or maybe Mexico or something, but he actually decided to go to the Middle East. And it's been a consequential visit thus far. I mean, he was greeted very warmly both in Saudi Arabia yesterday and in Qatar today. I don't know if you caught this, Chris, but they sent a motorcade of Elon Musk's cyber trucks to bring him into town, and then they had some camels in Qatar, and that was pretty neat. But it's a consequential visit, not only for where he's going and what he's brought with him, Chris, but as you know, for the speech that he gave yesterday that everybody's talking about. So I'm going to toss it over to you and have you give some of your first impressions on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump, like we said in the beginning, before he even took office, he's a very mixed bag. And, that's how he is as a president. He's hard to actually pin down or even trust, unfortunately, because he will say great things at times and then awful things at times. You really have to judge by his actions. I mean, we're seeing Doge just completely fall apart, unfortunately. And in this visit to the Middle East, he made a great speech that we're going to cover today. But again, is it just a speech? We'll praise what he said that was good, but then we have to take the other side. Is any of this going to happen? And can we even take it seriously?
Yeah, and it's also served up in the backdrop of literally just about a week ago bombing the heck out of Yemen for 2 months. So when he talks about non-intervention, he talks about a lot of things that we agree with. You got to remember that we just spent $1 billion bombing a bunch of poor people in the desert. But let's get into a couple of the quotes that he said, and I think it's important because for a number of reasons, Chris, and one of them I think is that there is a recognition, maybe not from him, but perhaps from the speechwriter, whoever that may be, and I'd love to meet the person, the drafter of the speech. There is a recognition that these are bad things, that neocons are bad things, that nation builders are bad things, that interventionism is a bad thing. That in and of itself is an achievement, because if they thought it was a winning idea, they would say it in a positive way. So just the fact that President Trump has to say we're not going to do that anymore, is recognizing that people don't want it. But here's one of the interesting points that he made, and this was in front of MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he's looking around the place, and he says, it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, and so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people who have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions, and charting your own destinies in your own way. Pretty powerful. I think probably either one of us or anyone that we're close to could have written that exact paragraph. What do you think, Chris?
No, I think it was great. But again, we have to come back. Is this just a speech? We hope not. This would be great. I mean, Western interventionists, I hate to say it, but the U.S. is still a Western interventionist, including President Trump. Now, he's pointing to the neocons and the globalists that fly around that he's talking about, who want to intervene, perhaps micromanage other nations. But now, if Trump doesn't want to do that, that's wonderful. But does he still want to intervene? I mean, we still have bases peppered all over the world. No troops are coming home. No bases are being closed. Foreign aid is still being showered. Weapons are still being showered. So he's talking about Western interventionists, but he himself is a Western interventionist. He threatens nations and bombed them into the Stone Age like nobody's ever seen ever before in the history of mankind. So, we have to take his actions along with his very good words here.
Yeah, and it's sort of similar to what happened with the foreign aid. I'm glad that you brought that up, Chris, because when the USAID stuff came out, we learned that the stuff that they were doing is so horrible. Um, Unfortunately, among Trump and especially the sort of the cult, the MAGA cult, it became the narrative became, well, look where all this money is going to all of these liberal and woke causes overseas. So it wasn't based on the philosophy that we shouldn't be spending money anywhere. And that the problem with that is that the whole interventionist system, through the use of these USAID and National Endowment for Democracy, it's set up to appease both sides, and both sides like it. That's why the National Endowment for Democracy contains the International Republican Institute and the National Democratic Institute. That ensures that both sides are going to vote for it. So couching these terms, this anti-interventionist terminology, as you well point out, Chris, is great. However, he may not think things are interventionists that actually are interventionists, like like bombing Yemen, like preparing to bomb Iran, possibly. So there's a problem with terminology, I think. But here's another good quote, Chris. He says, "In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies they did not even understand themselves." And I thought that is the most important part of what he said. And if he actually has taken that on board, that's important, because the the idea that you can go, I mean, this is the whole reason why interventionism failed, is that you can't know foreign societies. You can't even know, neighboring cities. Everything has a character unto itself. And so the recognition that they were intervening in complex societies they didn't even understand, that should be enshrined. That should be enshrined somewhere, I think.
Right. And that's why nations need to defend themselves. We should be defending the United States of America and nobody else. They are responsible for their own uh, defense. Now, to most people, this is a revolutionary idea, but it's very simple. Um, that's the way it should be done. That's how you don't bankrupt yourself. We are bankrupt by being the busybody of the world, believing that you were created to manage the world, and it all just falls apart. Uh, I I worry that he's just wants to change the interventionism from the very destructive neocon liberals. Is it preferable to neocons? Of course. Is President Trump preferable to Kamala Harris? Of course. But we need better than just taking the lowest bar and being slightly better than it. And he's right about societies being far too complex. But, Mr. President, it's the same here at home. The interest rates are far too complex for you to say that interest rates need to be lower. You have no idea what interest rates should be. Nobody does. You have no idea what the price of prescription drugs should be. So it's more of a, those people are interventionists and they're bad, but I know how to intervene. This is what both parties do with the Constitution. They want to make the other party accountable to it, and that's the only time they'll bring it up, but they can violate the Constitution all they want themselves. So we need President Trump to live these words, not just brand them correctly on his opponents, but to also, embody these ideas himself.
And there also has to be a new approach to the idea of American exceptionalism, and that term needs to be redefined. And now you can keep the term. We can keep the term. I think it's a fine term if you want to think that way. But we're not exceptional because we know exactly how your business should be run, how your country should be run, what churches you should have and should not have in your country. We're exceptional because we lead by example. I mean, to an extent, that was Reagan's legacy, the shining city on the hill. That is exceptional. And if the U.S. were to start thinking of itself in that way, you could keep all the rah, rah, rah exceptionalism. That's fine. But you have to channel it in a different way, I think.
Yeah, that's excellent. Daniel, if you don't mind, I'll go on to another quote
Sure.
about it. And it deals with Iran, and here he goes again, President Trump. I want to make a deal with Iran, but then he covers this with a threat. If Iran doesn't go along, or if they support terror, or the U.S. just accuses them of it, we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian exports to zero, like I did before. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Now, this is a very complex subject. Actually, you could start off, Dan, with it.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it interventionist to say who can and who cannot have weapons?
Yeah.
Who made you the one who could decide? Why are some countries in the Middle East allowed to have them and others aren't? Now, if you were to approach it correctly, it would be, you can't be, we don't want you shouldn't be aggressive towards your neighbors, all those sorts of things. But the idea that they can't have one, why not? North Korea got one and we stopped bothering them. The lesson of U.S. foreign policy, interventionist U.S. foreign policy, is you better get those weapons. You better get them quick, because as soon as you get them, they'll stop trying to overthrow you. And that's look what happened to Gaddafi in Libya. And this is explicitly what the Mike Waltz was talking about, that he wanted for Iran, the Libya solution. I think it was Netanyahu who mentioned the Libya solution. They gave up all their weapons and they got overthrown and destroyed anyway. So the lesson. Again, you're right, it is interventionist itself to talk that way about Iran. I do get the sense that he does want a deal with Iran. And I don't think it's because, well, partly it's for his ego. He wants to be viewed as a great deal maker. That's fine, if that's what floats your boat. But I think also there is the recognition that Iran is a formidable military power. And I showed a couple times on the show, Chris, as you know, the second Iranian response on October 1st of last year, when you saw the missiles easily penetrating the Iron Dome and all of the U.S. missile defense systems that we put into Israel at the cost of billions of dollars, easily penetrating those and destroying Israeli military bases. And these were supposedly not even their most sophisticated weapons. I hope that he understands what a disaster this war would be. And I think maybe that's an indication, maybe that's indicated by the fact that he got rid of Mike Waltz, who was secretly colluding with Netanyahu to put Trump in a trap, so that he would have no other option but to attack Iran. But whatever the case may be, the deal is there. It's not that hard. The outlines are very, very simple. The problem is that this is what the neocons did with Iraq. As you remember, Chris, they want to put maximalist demands that there's no way Iran could say yes to. You can't have any missiles at all. No, they're not going to do that. They've already seen what happens if you give up your defensive weapons. So that's what they're trying to do, is to wrong foot him on this. But the deal is pretty simple. There are only a couple of points. There's only a couple of reasons why Trump pulled out of the JCPOA in 2008 in the first place. And I think they were dumb reasons, but I think they're surmountable. So as you'd say, talk the talk. Well, you need to walk the walk. Then let's make the deal happen, and get toward a more prosperous Middle East, as he said in his speech.
Yeah, very, very good points, and I'll echo some of them. Yeah, it's who is the U.S. to tell other nations that they can't have nuclear weapons? Now, I personally don't want any nation to have nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
My own nation is the only one to ever use them. So you think that we would be like, we'll have to sit this one out,
Yeah.
instead of telling others that they can't have them because they might use them. And that's what we're told. Oh, these mullahs, they're all crazy and they'll use it in 2 seconds. Well, nobody knows that for sure. And again, we're the only ones that did it, and we didn't even have to do it.
Yeah.
So we're not the ones in the position to tell others. And they do it for preservation, because they know if they have them, that changes the game board. You're going to have to deal with them differently. And look at other nations in the area that have nukes. Israel, look at what they do to Gaza.
Yeah.
Does this look like a nation that should have nuclear weapons? God, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So, and we're going to tell them that they can't have them. And again, I don't want any nation to have them. So I got to reiterate that again. but they do it for preservation. Like you said, a war with Iran would be an absolute disaster. Iran is an ancient civilization. It wasn't created by Westerners drawing lines on a map and saying, okay, now this is Iraq, this is, all the other nations in the area that were just drawn up after the world wars by, people sitting on a table. This is Iran. They are a force to be reckoned with, and we should not be reckoning with them. And we have to do everything we can to speak out against any possible war against Iran.
And ironically, one of the reasons why Iran is so militarily formidable is the maximum pressure policy that Trump himself put on Iran, right? It made them realize that they need to be strong. And the same thing is true with Russia. Russia, 20 years ago or so, 25 years ago, when Putin took over, was very weak militarily. Its economy was in tatters, as they say. And it really was U.S. sanctions and U.S. Maximum pressure on Iran and Russia that forced them both to realize they need to militarize themselves. So, and in the future, the other thought that I had, Chris, is in the future, there will be new weapons that may make nuclear weapons obsolete. We saw the Orezhniks in Russia that were developed a new type of weapon, and not that we cheer new types of weapons, because I completely concur with your statement that it would be nice to be in a world without any nuclear weapons. But so there are other ways. But I think also Trump has to understand that an attack on Iran would have led to hundreds, probably thousands, of American casualties. There are 50,000 American troops within range of Iran right now. And can you imagine being a president and all of a sudden there are 10,000 casualties, 10,000 U.S. soldiers that were taken out instantly? It doesn't matter if Iran was flattened and made into a parking lot, because the headlines would only be these tens of thousands of Americans who were injured or killed. So he must understand that even someone like him, Chris, who was so what's the word, so obsequious toward Israel, would have to understand that there's you can only go so far, and the downside would be so huge to this. And let's hope he keeps that in mind.
Right. And our nation is not the nation that it was after the world wars. We are in financial, bankruptcy. I hate that, everybody knows it. I just read that a record-breaking number of Americans are just paying the minimums on their credit cards, record-breaking numbers. So the people are a mere reflection of our government, which is totally bankrupt. So to think that we are in some kind of position to go into a war against Iran and Russia and China would be suicide. And hopefully President Trump, I think he does understand this and look for better ways, get along with the people in the area. There have been presidents, including JFK, that wanted just peaceful and friendly trade and relations in the Middle East with the Arab nations, with Iran. And that is possible if you want it. We have not wanted it for a very long time now. And people, even in America today, that would be totally foreign to them. What do you mean, just trade with Iran and travel and be friendly and not threaten with nukes? Yeah, it's possible to do that. It was done before. Iran used to be a big ally with the Shah. So that is the road we should head towards, because a major war with these superpowers will be dead meat, and there will be no more United States of America in its current form.
Yeah, your credit card would be the least of your concerns.
Yeah.
Well, there's one other little segment that I wanted to mention, Chris, and I think it's really interesting because I think this section, in my opinion, is kind of an indictment on Trump's predecessors in the office of the presidency. He said, as president of the United States, my preference will always be for peace and partnership whenever those outcomes can be achieved. Always. It's always going to be that way. Only a fool would think otherwise. Now, here's the part that's interesting. In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They love using our very powerful military. And then here's what he says. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America and promote the fundamental interests of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do. And I think that is kind of a swipe at remember President George W. Bush, who looked into the soul of
Mhm.
Vladimir Putin. So I think that's a great. I mean, if this is what he believes, I think that's great. We don't need to be the moralizer. We let God do His judgment. It's not my job. I'm just the president. I thought that was a really clever couple of lines.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to believe that this is, something he would do. Unfortunately, we can't because he acts the opposite. He acts still as if he has to have his thumb around the world.
Yeah,
You can't do both. You can't say one thing and do another and then expect, people to believe you. Now, if he starts doing what you just said, then boy, we'll praise him, night and day. But
yeah,
we have to, with caution, say, these are very nice words. We're glad you're saying it, but we want to see the actions.
yeah. I think one of the if we can just switch over because we're getting toward the end, but I just wanted to mention one thing, Chris. I think probably the most bizarre aspect, and everyone is talking about it now on social media. The most bizarre aspect, and I just wonder if he was briefed on this, was this meeting between President Trump and Jolani, um, in who's self-proclaimed leader of president of Syria, with no elections scheduled in the near future. Um, there's this iconic picture, not iconic for in the good way, in my opinion, of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. In the middle is Donald Trump, and on the right is Al Jolani. And the Iranian official website captioned it this way from the left, and this is MBS: the man who created Al Qaeda, carried out 9/11, and supplied ISIS. In the middle, Trump, the one who killed the commander who defeated ISIS, and that would be Soleimani. And on the right, Jolani, ISIS itself. That's pretty much sums it up. I mean, Trump praised Jolani as a good-looking, tough guy with a strong past. This is the leader of Al Qaeda in Syria. This is the guy who created Al Qaeda in Syria, who ran Idlib and it's still run under Sharia law. And he's literally 6 months ago, he was riding into Damascus on the back of a motorcycle as dressed as a jihadi. He is the man who masterminded when he was in charge of Al Qaeda in Iraq, who masterminded the torture and murder of many Americans. Now, we could argue that they shouldn't have been there. Nevertheless, this is Al Qaeda, and all of a sudden now to see President Trump meeting with Al Qaeda. Now he has a suit on and he wears expensive watches, but he is the same Jolani who's killed a lot of Americans and who right now is presiding over the mass slaughter of plenty of Druze, Alawites, Christians in Syria itself. It's happening as we speak. So I just find this is one of the most bizarre photos, one of the most bizarre events I've ever heard of.
Not only bizarre, I mean, it's President Trump contributed to this. I believe, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, that he in his first term bombed Syria at one point. He kept troops there instead of bringing them home. The whole process of getting Assad out of office, President Trump contributed to. And now all of these people that are dying, Christians, we're Christians, and we hate to see Christians, we hate to see anybody persecuted, but being Christians ourselves, we hate to see Christians persecuted. President Trump helped to bring this about, and now he's meeting with, instead of Assad, the leader of Al Qaeda. The whole thing is just disgusting to the core, and they're now eating the fruits, the rotten fruits that they planted themselves. And it's I have very little positive to say about it.
Yeah, I could not have expressed it better, Chris. That's exactly right. And Assad was he authoritarian? Yeah, I'm sure he
Mm.
was. So was Putin. There are a lot of leaders. Xi Jinping is authoritarian, but for whatever faults he may have in that respect, he did protect racial and religious minorities. There was not the kind of sectarianism. I've been reading over the past few days, Chris, extremely disturbing accounts of young girls being kidnapped by these jihadists who are affiliated with Jolani. They kidnap these young gals, teenagers and they take them to be their wives. And it's happened.
Mm.
I've read dozens of stories so far about young Alawite girls being taken and forced into, let's be honest, sex slavery to these radical jihadists. And this is it. Assad must go. Okay, well, look what you get afterward. This is the poster child for why you don't want interventionism. So I'm very disappointed in Trump for having given it some credibility, because this should have been the biggest whoops for U.S. foreign policy, for the last 20 years.
Very good, Daniel. I'll finish up closing out saying, yeah, President Trump says good things. I hope this is not 4 years of this. That, boy, they really said some good stuff. And, the actions do not mimic what was said. Now, perhaps it could go the other way. I don't know the future any better than anyone else, but we do have to call it as we see it. We were talking about Doge almost every day when, the first few weeks of the administration, and now the Republicans aren't even voting to cut a penny of anything. So that's the way it can go. When enthusiasm wanes, and the politicians are experts at waiting everything out. They know that the public will, after a certain amount of time, forget. They'll lose their enthusiasm, and then you can just go back to robbing everybody blind as always. So while we love the words that are being said in the Middle East, we want to see good actions follow up, and then we'll have some positive things to say about the Trump administration.
All right, Chris, thanks very much. I want to also thank the audience for watching us today, and your patience with us, being in a different locale. Let's mix things up a little bit. Chris, I want to wish you a good day. I want to wish a good day to all of our viewers, and thanks for tuning in to the Liberty Report.